Once again, it's on. We are back. I am Cheo Hodari Coker here with,
David Betancourt.
and together we are Blerds in the Attic. Man, Thanksgiving week. I've got plenty to give thanks and praise for. Same time, it's really interesting being here in Hawaii because some of my neighbors have already started putting up Christmas decorations. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
That's
you
the
know,
island thing, man.
well, it's weird because here's the thing. I mean, it's like, yeah, like, I mean, the whole turkey thing, everything else, that's more. I mean, I grew up on the East Coast. I grew up, probably driving distance from Plymouth Rock. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, even though I agree with our brother Malcolm and Denzel, we didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us. So I'm definitely part of the team. I don't want to say anti-Thanksgiving because I like, yes, people coming together for any reason, family wise, but this is a whole nother podcast. So we start getting into the politics of what really happened.
Yeah, and how romanticized it's been. It's funny you mentioning that. Um, I'm as we know from our viral Dominican cakes TikTok. I am married to a Dominican, and Caribbean culture celebrates the holidays very early. Right now, in my house, we have 2 Christmas trees up, 3 if you count the one in the kids' room. We've got bows everywhere, decorative holidays. We've had guests over the last couple of weekends, and it's the same thing every year where people like, "Oh my God, you've already got your tree up." But in the Caribbean, like as soon as you hit November 1st, the tree is up.
Yeah,
Especially Dominicans, they love the holidays. They love Navidad, Christmas time, and it's something that me and my wife have been together 15 years. We get a little resistance from the kids because they're growing up very American, and even myself, uh, my African American mother, we didn't start putting up the decorations until after Thanksgiving. That was always once Thanksgiving was over, boom, okay, now we can
right.
start decorating. But here, November 1st, tree is up, decorations are up, elves everywhere, nutcrackers, snowman, you name it. It is a winter wonderland in my house right now. So it's very funny hearing you talk about seeing a lot of the locals over there in Hawaii where you are doing that. And it doesn't surprise me one bit. Island culture is all about anything to get the family together.
Well, as we say out here, mele kalikimaka. You know what I'm saying? It's just like it's a whole different vibe. It's just the same vibe, but it's a different vibe because, like, when you're in a situation like I am, where I can on my morning run, I'll run a mile and a half and then go put my feet in some sand and then run back. It has a different vibe in terms of the cold. I like seeing the cold on television. You know, I like my Christmas debates being about true Christmas movies like Die Hard, like Godfather. Those are Christmas movies in my household. And I really think in general, because I think that's a whole different debate. Sometimes people want to talk about, although I'm trying to think, what is it? What is a good Thanksgiving? Is there a good Thanksgiving movie?
Hmm. That's a good question. We might have to look that up and investigate that. None popped up to mind for me. I can think about 10 different Christmas movies
Yeah,
because,
well, I mean, because this Christmas has probably become the neo black Christmas movie classic. You know, Preston Whitmore, with Idris Elba and Regina King, and I mean, there's a lot of great scenes in that movie. Chris Brown, trying to think. There's so many of them. It gets pretty funny after a while. But we're not in Christmas. We're in Thanksgiving. We're not in Thanksgiving. We are still. Well, actually, I think we're dropping this on Thanksgiving. So uh, here we are.
yeah, happy early Thanksgiving to all who celebrate here in the States. Again, it's very funny because in the Dominican Republic where my wife is from, and I say this because my wife handles all culinary things in terms of cooking and preparing because I can't cook for squat. Um, they don't celebrate Thanksgiving there. Thanksgiving is not a thing. Obviously there are a lot of Dominicans that come over and settle in New York and they pick it up by being in New York and stuff like that. But my wife is not one of those Dominicans. But it's been very fun to watch her kind of enjoy it just as a kind of family communal gathering kind of thing. But she's not a big turkey fan. So we a lot of times we do alternate birds or alternate meats or something like that to try and spruce it up a little bit.
Okay. Well, that's all well and good, but what everybody wants to know is there going to be a cake?
Hey, I had so this past weekend, shout out to my sister-in-law, Tita. We celebrated her birthday this weekend here at the house, which meant it was round 2 on the Dominican cake. It was by the same lady, just as good. Everybody was really happy. I invited a Puerto Rican buddy of mine who I used to work with at the Washington Post. He had never had a slice before, so it was world changing for him. So once again, Dominican cake taking care of business.
All right, so we got to find out who this person is, or at least at the very least see if they can sponsor the podcast.
She saw my wife sent her the TikTok that went
Mhm.
viral. And
Wow.
she was so happy about it. So she was supposed, because she was like, "Oh my god, can I leave a comment and say, where I am?"
Mhm.
So hopefully she did that. I haven't gone back to check because there were so many comments, like
Yeah.
it just, insane. And you can hear more about that in our secondary podcast on Dominican cakes that Cheo and I will be starting as soon as we can.
Sí, por eso la verdad, porque somos Blerds y
Somos
tenemos que,
Blerds que
yeah,
hablamos español y comemos bizcocho dominicano.
y tenemos que tener dos podcasts, dos.
No, but it's been great. So we had some more Dominican cake. Obviously, it's early holiday season here, but one thing I've been doing, and this is your fault. Uh, I've first of all, I didn't think there was anything that was going to break my Michael Jackson movie trailer binging because you know how it was when that trailer first came out. I was just watching it. If you have made a YouTube reaction video to the Michael biopic movie, I've already watched it. Where
Right.
every single one. And my wife was actually worried. She said, "David, are you going to be okay? Because this movie doesn't come out until April." And
What you know what's even worse than that, what's funniest than that, is the rabbit hole of Michael Jackson impersonators who are angry that they weren't the one that got picked,
I've been skipping
and then
and swiping
complaining
left on those.
about your man Jafar. It's a little nuts, man.
Skipping and swiping left on those. Jafar has the DNA required. He is more than capable. I'm not even going, just because it's not that type of podcast, I'm not even going to get into those clowns that are out there
See,
doing
come on, okay, wait, what? Shimon, man, you want to be starting
shit.
something?
Not worth talking about. But the one thing, and my wife had a reason to be concerned because, I mean, everything, the algorithm on my phone has changed. Now, every time I'm checking on family, I'm also seeing like old Michael clips from back in the day. That's
Wait,
how
so, but did you change your ringtone?
I haven't changed. No change to the ringtone yet, but I have been listening to the music more. All
See,
the stuff
because
the trailer's designed to do.
because last time I called you, it was dun 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 dun.
Well, I am a bad man. No, I'm kidding. No, it's so the one thing that's actually breaking me out of that and kind of taking over my brain a little bit is F1. I finally
Huh?
saw F1, bought the 4K, watched it here at home with a friend who came over to watch it, and blown away, loved it. Now, to your credit, you had been preaching and saying F1 was a great movie since we started this podcast. And I finally got a chance to watch it. And that Hans Zimmer score, I am so jealous because you had been telling me about it. My sister Ashley been telling me about it, how good it was because she took her son, my nephew Reese, to see it. I am so envious of the people that got to see that in the IMAX theater with IMAX sound for that Hans Zimmer score. I can only imagine how great of a theatrical experience that was.
Oh, it's amazing. Absolutely amazing. I mean, and that's the thing because there's something else that's kind of been heavy on my mind is everyone's kind of worried about AI and the preponderance of AI and AI is part of everything and it's good, it's bad, it's indifferent. It's really I'm still trying to get my feelings about it because there's fun AI, okay? Because if you have an obsession with Michael Jackson trailer clips, I've gone deep down the Sora 2 rabbit hole of people that are either, I kind of love the those instantaneous animated, overlays over people taking snippets of a conversation. Like, we probably could do like an entire, like, animated clip over you talking about Dominican birthday cake and reenact the whole thing, probably,
Yeah,
right? There's
those are fun. I've seen a few of
it,
those.
some of those are really interesting. The other ones, like, okay, the Sora Tupac rabbit hole is deep because some of it's scary, honestly. You know how good and how funny and how interesting some of those things are. I've seen Tupac coach football. like I've seen him in WWE wrestling. I've seen him in Cuba hanging out with Elvis. It's just it's endless. But respectfully, because I do know members of his family, so like I understand how I would be enraged if someone did the same thing with one of my deceased loved ones that I have real attachment and memories of. But beyond that, of course, you've just got so many possibilities. Like now, I, I, there are all these different companies, like and I'm gonna get them wrong. So in the comments, please don't attack me if I mix up Gemini with Claude or any of these other things, because I'm just starting to learn about it. But the generative video is getting so good. The way that you can now, rather than it being a plagiarism machine, you can feed it your own stuff, your own writing, your own PDFs to create your own database and have it write as you or what you would do predictively. Yes, of course, it's not going to be exactly what your turn of phrase, but once you start kind of getting into those realms, it's scary, I think, what it's going to do to um, let's just keep it blurred. Let's talk about Hollywood, not just special effects, but the development of movies. Just in terms of the notes that you get as a screenwriter, just in terms of the possibilities thereof of writing rooms. It's going to decimate so much, and it's scary. But then again, I also think about the fact that you know digital samplers, like back in the day when for our hip hop generation, when Pete Rock and Q-Tip and everybody started, Ali Shaykh Muhammad and Said G and Large Professor, when they first brought the first drum machines home and started taking little snippets of James Brown and little snippets of Bob James in these records, and they only had 3 seconds of sample time, but they turned that into whole records. What's some black kid or some Dominican or Puerto Rican kid or any kind of kid that has no money but has a phone, all of a sudden is going to be able to do things in the background where they might be able to produce a movie that's not of the quality of F1, but with if you see what like I don't know if you've ever seen those videos with those kids with no money, and I
And they
think
make a
that they're,
movie, right?
yeah, they're
Yeah.
like Nigerian and they're like
Yep. I've
recreating
seen.
like shot for shot.
I know
But
exactly what you're talking about.
but when you get to the point where probably, say for example, okay, if Spike Lee was able to make She's Gotta Have It on credit cards for $100,000, $150,000 back in the day, right? Imagine what you could do with $150,000 in today's technology and these phones. And so it could be the birth of a bunch of new things, but it could also be the death of the entire industry. And
Yeah, I'm kind of I'm of two minds of the subject. I very much like the idea you were getting at of what can a kid that doesn't have all the resources of a Hollywood studio behind them, what can they do with something like this in terms of kind of exploring where their creativity can go, merge with technology. But at the same time, it really feels like a lot of the major studios out there are kind of salivating because they see a cost cutting measure. I mean, let me ask
Mhm.
you, you're a person that makes TV shows and streaming shows and stuff like that. Is there anything you've seen that you say, I'd like to utilize something like this on the next thing that I do?
No, but that's a loaded answer. Like, would I want it to generate something that I will commercially release? No, but I do see how you could basically feed it a storyboard and get a quick amalgamation, a physicalization of something that you're thinking that you could present and saying, this is a rough version. So imagine, for example, if the Wachowskis had the technology back in the day. Because one of my favorite, because you know how I have all my coffee table books, which is how, you know, just beyond screenwriting, I'm teaching myself how to direct. And, because, my mentor, John Singleton, said, like, he taught me how to not only look at making ofs books, but also books on photography in terms of lighting and how to kind of break things down and look at ideas and all that stuff. One of my favorite books is The Art of the Matrix. And it basically what they did was they storyboarded the entire movie before a single frame was shot, almost like a big graphic novel. And that's how they were able to basically take the concept to Warner Brothers at the time, which is ironic because we're going to talk about Warner Brothers later. And they could say, look, this is what this is going to look like. This is what we mean by these 360 moves. This is what we mean by the real world versus the world of the Matrix. They were able to, and they have like, because Frank Miller was a huge influence on them as well. But they were able to really break it down. But imagine if you were literally able to feed that into something and then have an animatic that is instantaneous, and you can give because I'm not. I've worked with some studio execs. I've worked with others that, you know, you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. But what I'll say is that the lack of imagination is fear because they have to articulate it usually to a higher up. Or if you get the higher up, they really got to make the call to the moneymaker saying, hey, we're going to spend 30, 40, 50 million dollars on this. But if you're able to show it to somebody in a way that they understand very quickly at very little cost to yourself, that's where you're going to start seeing some changes, I think. But then the other things, it's just going to be like, I think you're going to see a lot of ripple effects just throughout, just in terms of staffing, in terms of writers' rooms, in terms of it's already scary enough that so many television shows are written by a single person,
Yeah.
But then once you're basically able to kind of have, I'm not saying it's not going to replace a writer's room because nothing replaces the interaction of the ideas that comes from people. But what happens is that you can do research that would have taken you 15 hours in 5 minutes just by it just spits out like PDFs and just all these different things. And when people learn how to flip it to their own dictates, the same way that did digital samplers replace playing instruments? No. I mean, someone like Alicia Muhammad, who I met from A Tribe Called Quest 30 years ago, and also with Adrian Young, became one of the principal music makers of the music of Luke Cage. That was Adrian's whole point to Ali. It's like, play an instrument, play bass, like let's go analog because it has a certain richness and realness to it. But then at the same time, because of Adrian's background and because of Ali's background, Ali can basically program a drum machine like nobody's business. He
Yeah.
still thinks in terms of samples when he wants to, and so you can't tell me that he didn't learn something from both processes. And I think the same thing is going to happen in terms of, I think it's going to be more of a combination of using analog techniques and using the technology potentially to enhance what you're doing. But the fear and the danger is people are just going to get lazy and just use it to just eliminate jobs, eliminate collaboration, eliminate the possibility of the discovery that happens when you make mistakes. You know,
That's
I,
the thing to me. I don't think AI, and you made a good point there. It's about laziness, and to me, it's about cheapness and cutting corners and always thinking about the bottom line. AI can do some pretty cool stuff, but to me, with everything I've seen, almost 9 times out of 10, or 10 times out of 10, I know it's AI. I
yeah.
don't think AI can go out there and make an F1. F1 isn't AI. F1 is Money, money.
Hmm.
And I can tell that Apple had boatloads of money on top of all the sponsorship cash that they got from all those ads that appeared on all the cars and F1 and all that stuff. But watching that movie in 4K, I said, this is a well put together product, and I can tell that money was spent and money was spent well. And when you have certain companies, and let's face it, Apple is a wealthy company, you've got some folks that can, not worry about the bottom line and not worry about spending 200, $300 million. And when you have that, sometimes the end result is something really cool like F1.
Yeah. No, 100%. And I think the one thing that, because we talked about this, AI or no AI, and I do not think that, I think as long as filmmakers stay ahead of the technology and flip it to their dictates, and at the same time also don't allow studios to use it as a means to replace people, which is hard because, hell, studio executives themselves in some cases are going to be replaced because AI actually reads your script. But that's another story for another time.
Well,
Um,
shout out to you for getting me into F1. You kept saying
Yeah.
F1's a great film, and I sat down and watched it and was blown away. Brad
But
dancing,
that's really the point I'm trying to make is the theatrical experience cannot be replaced.
no.
You know,
The one negative thing of me watching F1 is how upset I was that I didn't see it in a theater
yeah.
because
Well,
I know.
so this is the analogy I would make so that we can end this argument. Okay, if AI is microwave popcorn, that's cool, but it does not taste as good as the popcorn that you get in the movie theater. And it does not taste as good as the popcorn in the movie theater tastes when you're watching your favorite film as in a large, screen as possible. And I think that the thing is that people cannot, you know, denigrate or get rid of the theatrical experience, but something has to get figured out because what's happening is that so many movies are getting dumped on streaming that you'll see a movie and you don't even remember what it was like to see a non-action movie on a big screen anymore, and that's a little scary because I saw Luca, and I'm not going to butcher Luca's name, but I saw the the Julia Roberts movie with After the Hunt. I think that's the name of it. Um, you might have, of course, this is where I'm having my
That is what it's called, After the Hunt.
yeah. It's one of those movies that, like, in the '90s, in the early 2000s, there's no possible way, even as a drama, that movie with Julia Roberts and all these stars would not be theatrically released. It probably went out in 2 theaters, and now it's on Amazon, was getting all the eyeballs. But even the way it's shot, and even with the way that my man Malik Saeed, um, you know, who did the cinematography and also, of course, was the cinematographer of Belly and Clockers and An Old Friend. It was just such a subtly but beautifully shot movie. It deserves to be, even something that's the problem is that you don't have the dichotomy. Yes, the F1s of the world, the Top Gun Mavericks, same director, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
100% take, what Ryan did with Sinners, Ryan Coogler did with Sinners, or even what, you know, um, the most recent Leonardo DiCaprio movie.
One battle after another.
One battle after another, like that, amazing theatrical experiences. But I also think that the smaller human dramas that don't have the special effects, you know, should find a place on the big screen, and that we can't lose the theatrical experience. And it's a little scary, with all these tech companies coming in to swoop in to buy a classic studio like Warner Brothers. Like, what's going to happen with that?
Yeah, and we'll be getting into that in a second. One thing I want to talk about next, and I'm actually pretty hyped to talk about it because so much of what this podcast, Blerds in the Attic, is about is adaptations, live action, animated, whatever, that derive from comic book culture. Now we're actually going to talk about a comic book, which sometimes we got to remind ourselves without the comic books, we don't have the MCU. We don't have James Gunn and Peter Safran redoing DC. We don't have the Snyderverse. The comic books do it all. And one of
Yeah.
the most valuable comic books in the history of the Milky Way was found in there were these two brothers, and it was their mom passed away, and they were reluctantly trying to go clean up the attic, and they found an issue of Superman #1. Superman #1 from 1939. So, are you? All right, thank you, Jen, for pulling this up. This is from Boris Kitt, who I love from the Hollywood Reporter. This comic's from 1939. First issue of Superman. Now, this isn't Action Comics #1, but this is still just as this is the very first issue of Superman in his own title from 1939. This comic, this is what blows me away. There's so many things about this story that blow me away. First is it was found in an attic. So shout out to attics. We
Yeah.
love attics here at Blerds in the
Well,
Attic.
shout out for Brothers and Addicts, but even though the brothers weren't brothers, but still.
They weren't. They weren't. They weren't brothers. They weren't brothers, but they were brothers.
Yes.
And these brothers, emphasis on the ERS, reluctantly went to go clean up their mom's attic because the mother had told them when she was a kid, she collected all of the original superhero comics back in the 30s and 40s, and she said that she had them preserved, but she, was obviously advanced in age and could not remember where she left them. So they go to clean out the attic, and not only, this is the thing that I just can't wrap my mind around. Not only did they find the comic, it was in near perfect condition. Literally,
So this is the question I had, because I thought about this. Okay, like all that money that we've spent over the years on these acid-free backs and the bags and all that science and don't open this, and she didn't have any of that shit, and she still
nothing.
managed to preserve a comic that she forgot where it was,
This is what's blowing me
and
away.
it sold for $9 million. They see, come on, cut to the chase, brother.
Here-
$9 million,
But here's why it sold for $9
biggest
million. dollars.
biggest
So
return on investment of all time, almost, if you think about it. Because what? Because a comic book back then, what was the listed price? 2 cents, 5 cents?
maybe 10 cents on this thing, maybe.
I
But
mean, hey, funny. Like we could ask AI, okay, what's the ROI on a 9 cent investment that sells for $9 million? I mean, good God, that's incredible, you know.
yeah, yep, 10-cent comic. Superman #1 was 10 cents. But here's the thing. Now, as some of you know who followed me over my career, I'm now at The Athletic, the sports section of the New York Times, and the vertical I edit and write for is the collectibles and memorabilia vertical. So I've always got, trading cards laying around and stuff like that. That's a huge part of it. A huge part of the collectibles industry, both in sports and in comics, is the condition of the product. This is what's blowing me away about this thing. This comic from 1939 got a CGC grade of 9.0. The best you can get is 10. I have comics in here in the attic right now that wouldn't grade as a 9 because they're tossed all over the place or whatever. First of all, it's impossible. It's not as rare with trading cards. Like the biggest grader in trading cards is PSA, Professional Sports Authenticator. And if you get a PSA 10 on a card, then it's like the card is perfect. It has no errors. It doesn't happen all the time, but it happens. You can go on eBay right now and search, Jaden Daniel. I bought my son a Jaden Daniels PSA 10 Donruss rookie card for $40 for his birthday. In comics, it doesn't happen like that. Comics very rarely are graded at a 10. You can go and look up some of your favorite comics that you want to get graded. You'll see a 9.8, a 9.6, 9.4, very rarely. And that's what comics that are from the 80s and 90s and 2000s. This is a comic from 1930. This means that this comic, wherever it was in a position where it wasn't getting bent, it wasn't getting sun damage or rain damage. That's the thing that blew me away, because people don't understand that grade of 9.0 literally added millions more of dollars to the value of the comic.
Yeah, yeah, no.
Millions more. 9.0 in the attic? Are you
But
like
but I
what?
mean, that's what, it kind of reminds you of those stories of people that like find like Picassos and or really rare,
That's the
or
equivalent of finding a Mickey Mantle rookie in your attic in perfect condition.
Banksys, or well, or like my favorite American Roadshow, where the and when Antiques Roadshow,
Love that show.
where the guy, had a pristine Paul Newman Rolex that he thought he was going to get like maybe $1,000 for, and then the guy informed him, no, this Rolex was actually worth $500,000, and the guy almost fell out. He was a Vietnam vet. Who was really down on his luck. I'm probably misremembering what I saw the snippet of, but but yeah, like anytime somebody finds something like that, it's definitely a one of those great things. And then it just shows you, like, it also fuels the insanity of us collecting these things and not getting rid of them, because the strangest thing about it is you never know what's going to be that thing that's worth so much.
It's
Like, like one of the more arcane things I have in my comic book collection, something that I never thought would be worth a lot of money, but ultimately is some of my original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles first printings.
Oh yeah, those are very valuable.
But like when I bought them, it was like a novelty, and I was a kid, and then boom, it's like they're all of a sudden worth money. It's crazy,
It's funny though because in the trading card industry, there's something, and the trading cards got really big in the '90s, and there's this era called the junk wax era, and that's where so many cards were being printed that nothing was worth anything. Part of the reason Superman #1 at a grade of 9.0 sold for $9 million is because there's not a whole bunch of them around. Most of them have been destroyed or disintegrated or whatever. There's just not many. One of the biggest selling comic books of all time and most popular comics of all time is X-Men #1 back in 1991 with Chris Claremont and Jim Lee. That that
hmm
that beginning of the 1990s X-Men run that inspired X-Men the animated series. Those comics, are worth, $20 here, $40 there, maybe if they're in good condition. But the
right.
reason, back then during the collector craze, where every comic had, #1 collector's issue slapped on it because they were trying to take advantage of the collector's craze. Those comics aren't worth that much because they printed millions of them and they're easy to find.
Yeah, I mean, as I well know, because I've got a lot of those.
And don't get me wrong, those comics still bring me great joy. But I remember being a kid, being 12 years old in 1992, Death of Superman, Superman #75, written and drawn by Dan Jurgens, a person I got to know a little bit over the course of my career as a comic book culture reporter, one of the greatest guys in comics. You couldn't tell me back then when I ran to the comic book. I remember calling the comic book store and saying, "Do you have Superman 75 in stock?" Because it was selling out. It was selling out. But what happened was they were printing so many, they just kept sending more. A store would sell out, they would order more, and here came more copies. So I remember begging my mother to drive me to the comic store, picking up that comic, not wanting to touch it, putting it in the bag and board, because I'm 12 years old. I'm too young to understand that so many of these things have been printed that these comics are really never going to be worth anything. They're 50 years from now, if somebody has Superman #75 from 1992, it's not going to sell for $9 million because there's still going to be millions of copies easily found. But I am blown away by this story. I cannot believe the price doesn't surprise me because as soon as I saw the grade, I said, these guys just hit the jackpot. I'm thinking something that old, I'm thinking it's going to be graded like a 3 or a 4, a 9. That's just,
I mean, but so I guess the other question is who bought it.
that is a good question. A lot of times stuff like that is privatized. I'm sure if the owner wants people to know who they are, they will reveal themselves soon. You see a lot of this in the sports card collecting world too. A recent card, a Kobe Michael Jordan card, was bought by one of the guys on Shark Tank. They spent like $14 million on it or something like that. So it's these big time, and there's a little worry about that in terms of, is the average fan being priced out? Is this just now a thing for the same people that are bidding on, famous art at art
Mhm.
auctions and things like that? But
Well, 100%. I mean, well, the average fan can't go to a regular season game because
yeah,
the prices are so
yeah,
high, and so that's kind of a given. Like,
that's a fantastic story though. And in my time, like if I was still a comic book culture reporter at the Washington Post, which I'm not, but if I was, I would have gone out of my way to try and reach those brothers and chat with them because that is just the find of the century.
yeah, no, hands down, that's definitely.
What's the biggest? So for me, in terms of comics that I know have been in my family, my father always talks about the fact that he had that issue of Amazing Spider-Man where the Punisher made his first appearance, because that's one of my dad's favorite characters, the Punisher. And when my mom got pregnant with me, my cousin Louis, because my dad was only 15 at the time when he found out my mom was pregnant. So his cousin Louis came by and took all his comics because he was like, "Well, you won't be needing these anymore. You're a dad now, so I'm going to take all these." And one of the comics that he took was that first appearance of the Punisher, which my cousin Louis still has. So that's the most famous comic that has ever been in possession of my family. What about you?
Uh, Not really. You know, a lot of family stuff, like, there were no, like, although my grandfather, Bertram Wilson, the Tuskegee Airman, was kind of a pack rat, like, like, and like, so for example, I've got an old Duke Ellington poster, from a concert that he went to. I still don't know when it was. It was downstairs when he passed and came into my possession so it's in the house right now, you know. Um, so there are certain things like that, but like he wasn't really a comic book collector. Like for me, I guess my comic like that, which ultimately I sold for way more than I bought it for, because I bought it at face value and sold it for a lot more, was the that first Secret Wars, the one with the first appearance of the Spider-Man black costume,
Oh, that's a
you
classic.
know. And then I got some Luke Cage's, or really the Heroes for Hire. Like, I actually bought them at the Comic Con, where we debuted the show, or
Mm.
debuted the trailer for the show, and kind of had our panel. And a lot of those have gone up in value. But most of the stuff that I personally collected were just like X-Men, just from since sixth grade. Like, my Wolverines, my Frank Miller, Chris Claremont Wolverines, which, the reason that I got rid of a lot of my comics is, um, I knew that they would give, the people that I sold them to much more enjoyment than I had from having them. And then, the problem with preserving them and putting them in bags and bags is you never really go back to read them again. You,
No,
you,
you
you,
almost
you
don't
you
want to.
know, and so it's like, because you have the trade paperbacks or like the hardcovers that like I have, like you see some of those back here, and because I actually use them on my actual work, whether it's generating ideas or adaptations or just reading things or looking at structure, you name it. It's like it's any value that I would have gotten, I've already gotten returned 10, 15 fold in my career. So I'm not as attached to some of them. Some of them I have sentimental value for, too. But like others, it's just like, you realize that you spend so much time trying to collect these things, and then it's just like they end up sitting in boxes. And so it's like, why not give them to people, or sell them to people who really do enjoy like having them, and so it's kind of the balance. It's like, on one hand, it's like you will have those things that are worth so much because it's some kind of anomaly. You have other things that, like you said, because they overpublished, you thought it was worth it at the time when you bought it, but now it's not worth the same. So it's kind of a balance. Like you never know, you know. And sometimes the thing that you thought was the least valuable can end up being the most valuable. And so you just kind of have to just follow your instincts. But the one thing I do know is that collectively, the experience of buying, like, that's what I miss. I miss the camaraderie that would come from running into the same people every Wednesday as you went to buy your comics, and the debates that would happen about certain comics, certain artists, storylines, that whole thing. And that's kind of what I treat Twitter as, because when I'm having these arguments or talking about certain things, the back and forth, like, that's what I just kind of view it as one big comic book, lobby as you're waiting, after, for your turn at the register to kind of ring up your bags and backs. Um, but it's also kind of the same reason why I can be as irreverent about it when, I'm getting attacked for something, because I'm just like, you say my name 4 times, I'm there. I don't give a fuck. Like, and I have fun with that, because it's like, it shouldn't be this thing where people get so angry and they all of a sudden they like are blocking everybody left and right, or they're canceling it's just not that deep, um I think you have to have fun with it.
Yeah. Well, staying in the DC universe, we're gonna move away from those brothers ERS, not AS, cashing in. That's I think it's two brothers. So that's like 4.5 a brother. So congratulations to you all. But let's stay in the DC universe.
GPA,
Um,
get paid always.
yeah, always get paid. So there've been kind of these, you know, everything you have to take with a grain of salt, but I've been seeing a lot of stuff online uh where they're saying Pierce Bronson potentially saying he wouldn't mind reprising his role as Dr. Fate in the DC universe. Obviously, Pierce debuted as Dr. Fate in the much maligned Black Adam movie with Dwayne The Rock Johnson. That was kind of a ensemble of characters alongside Black Adam, and Pierce Bronson's Dr. Fate was one of them. Obviously, for me, Pierce is always going to be James Bond.
Yes.
I know he's got some famous TV characters as well, but for me specifically, James Bond. But I thought for all of Black Adam's faults and why that definitely shouldn't have been, I think, the recentering of DC, and obviously they Warner Brothers made the decision to move away from that. I really enjoyed his Doctor Fate. Do I
Mhm.
think he's going to return as that? I don't. For everything that I've kind of, I know you can technically say that the Peacemaker world was a part of the old DCU, so technically it's possible. We've already got Jason Momoa coming back, granted as a different character in Lobo in the upcoming Supergirl movie. But I thought one, Dr. Fate looked great. That was a great
Mhm.
costume that they had. And Pierce obviously has a certain je ne sais quoi that a lot of actors just don't have. He seemed to be taking the role seriously. And I actually wouldn't mind seeing him again in that role, especially because Dr. Fate is such a multi-dimensional kind of character. He's absolutely the kind of character that you could explain 1 minute being in the Snyderverse or the Rockverse, whatever you want to call it, and then the next minute being in James Gunn's DCU. What do you think about that?
Well, here's the thing. It's like, did I enjoy his portrayal in Black Adam? Yeah, I thought he was good. But what I can't shake every single time I see Pierce Brosnan, I just keep thinking Old Man Bond and the fact that there needs to be an Old Man Bond movie the same way that, you know, we finally had Old Man Logan or a version of that in Logan, you know. And here's the thing, it's like there's a precedent because of, when Sean Connery return to the character, even though it was not technically canon Bond, but ultimately because of the popularity got looped back in terms of Never Say Never Again, which is basically just another riff on Thunderball because of
Hmm.
the crazy rights around that one property. But the thing is like Connery was like he seemed old at the time, but now I guess I'm biased because I'm probably the same age that he was when he made Never Say Never Again. Like I'm 52 right now, so we'd have to look up to see how old Connery was when he made Never Say Never Again. He's probably like 46 probably. How old was he?
Let's see. How old is Connery?
How old was Connery when he made Never Say Never Again?
Let's see. He was 52.
Oh, it's crazy. I'm the same age. Oh my god,
You could
that
be
that
James Bond right now, Cheo.
yeah, I could Cobra, Cheo Cobra. But the thing is, it was like that was really I remember watching him in that movie, and it was like as a kid, like yeah, he was older, and that was part of the joke, but he was still Bond. He was still kicking ass. He was still vibrant. And I think that's the thing is like, particularly since they've really painted themselves into a corner when they killed Bond, in this last Bond movie.
Yeah, I didn't like that.
It's like you might as well just like while you are about to do a palate cleanse, you really could bring back Pierce Brosnan for one more go at the character, and then do whatever else
Hey,
you're gonna do.
Amazon hasn't cast their Bond yet. Still
I
time.
mean, I'm saying like it would be controversial, but people would go for it because I mean he's still, even when you see him in Gangland, even when you see him in these other things, like if he put on the suit or if the Aston Martin came out and he got in it, and, it's like you'd be like, oh, like I'm back. You would accept it immediately, you know.
Hey, you ever want to go down a fun rabbit hole? Uh, go to the Google machine and look up Porfirio Rubirosa, who
Okay.
is the Dominican playboy that many consider to be the true inspiration for James Bond. This was a real person that the James Bond author, I think, got to know at some point. But just fascinating, fascinating stuff. I think I've even heard that they might be trying to make a movie about him at some point. But let me tell you, when I found out that the inspiration for James Bond might have been a Dominican man, that I'm like, that tracks. that tracks a lot. So,
Yeah,
um,
what you mean? Like flat coals, like likes to get his drink on a lot of women.
yes, muchas mujeres.
I mean, but the thing about it that's interesting is like logistically, that's not as crazy as you would think because even though Ian Fleming, the author of James Bond, was former British intelligence, he wrote all the Bond books in Jamaica because he had an estate called Goldeneye that's in Orca Besa, and he wrote the books like from there, which is why like there's some which why Doctor No was a tie-in, had a Jamaican tie-in, and there was a whole thing, and and there was always certain like elements of you could understand like that's what a very quick flight, from Jamaica. Like it's possible that particularly back in the day that they could have run the same social circles, you know.
Man, I when I it's a very interesting subject. It tracks absolutely 110%, and I would not be surprised at all if that happens. So, matter of fact, I might do another deep dive on that later on, just because it's such an interesting topic to me. But shout out to Ian Fleming for, us writers. We always have to have our spots where we write. The place where we write our masterpieces is always like kind of,
Yeah.
I don't know, sacred. Like I'm going through that now that I've kind of constructed the attic here in the house to be my office for work and podcast studio and place where I watch football and all that stuff. And I'm like, is this going to be, my house in Jamaica where I write my next big thing? I mean, I hope so. But,
Yeah.
I totally get that he, he had his place because, as when you're writing fiction and creating worlds, you kind of have to go to another plane, if you will, to build that world.
Yeah, well, trust me. Like I'm definitely trying to figure out my, fish out of water, you know, kind of action play television show.
Hey, but
Um,
you're on an island now, so you're
you know what I'm
destined
saying?
to write big stuff.
Set in Hawaii, like Black Magnum, so to speak. I mean, it's got to happen. So
I mean, Ian Fleming wrote it in Jamaica. You're in Hawaii. Like it's all lining up, man. The next big thing you're gonna write is there in Hawaii.
true indeed.
Um. So yeah, but in regards to Pierce Bronson, do I think that's gonna happen? I don't think it will. I
No
think
way.
there's so
I
much
mean, well,
other
I
stuff
mean,
going on.
the reason what happened is I hate to say it, but it's the ageism in Hollywood. There's no way that they're going to build a franchise around, an actor that is in his mid 70s.
And I don't think you
Um,
would want that anyway. At his age.
well, not that's not true because trust me, if Clint Eastwood said that he was going to if you told me that Clint Eastwood was going to direct a version of what was the Batman was it Batman Beyond where
Mhm.
it's old Batman and the young kid, I'd watch the hell out of that.
Okay, you got me with that.
You know what I'm saying? Because if particularly if you told me that Clint Eastwood was gonna be the old you know um Bruce Wayne, and you wouldn't expect him to do any action, and it would just be him mentoring this kid, like, and
Yeah,
knowing how
I'd watch
good a
it.
director Clint Eastwood is, like,
I'd watch that. Granted, they were supposed to do that with Michael Keaton, and they screwed it up.
this
But
they did. I mean, like that one moment at the Oscars with Keaton when they put the camera on him, and
and
I was
DeVito
just
and
like,
Schwarzenegger.
I was I just his eyes. I'm like, he just did like that's like he's still Batman, you know?
He will always be Batman, and that if you're gonna bring him back, I mean, there's just such a whole going down a whole nother rabbit hole. And obviously, I'm a Batman '89 purist. That's my favorite movie of all time. But how cool would that have been? I actually remember talking about Eastwood. One of my big things I used to read my Bible back in the day was Wizard magazine. Loved
Hmm.
that magazine.
Yeah,
Their covers, the comics.
I used to aspire to write for Wizard. It was a cool
Same
mag.
here. I wanted to write for Wizard so bad.
Yeah,
One of my good friends, Alex Segura, who's a big time author for Marvel and other publications, he used to be the publicist. He used to be the PR guy at DC, but he interned at Wizard, and I just thought he was a rock star because
yeah,
of that. But remember, they used to have the casting call, the page where they
yeah,
would just pick certain actors to play.
yeah, yeah.
I remember there was one where they were trying to cast the X-Men movie, and they picked Clint Eastwood to be Wolverine.
Right.
I could see that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, like, it's I know from the other side, fan casting is one thing because people are always, oh, well, if someone looks like this, they would be perfect to play that character. But you just embody a character differently, and you can't always just do like that. That's why, like, when I tell that Hugh Jackman story of like when I did the Premiere Magazine story on cover story for the first X-Men movie that Bryan Singer directed, where Hugh Jackman replaced Dougray Scott, which is arguably the best backup quarterback story this side of Tom Brady. Replacing Drew Bledsoe recently. Like, of course I got, because I'm the world's biggest James Winston fan. Like that game yesterday. Oh my God, that was
Bro,
just
okay,
that was
I
insane.
know
That
Cheo
was
and I have to
insane.
check ourselves sometimes because every now and then we're both big sports fans and
Yeah,
I know, those are two worlds that don't always align together. But when and I'm supposed to not like the Giants because I'm, as
yeah,
you can tell from my gear, a Washingtonian. But Jameis is, besides the fact that we're talking about Jameis Winston, current quarterback for the New York Giants, former star quarterback at Florida State University. He's been bouncing around a lot of teams, getting his shot with the Giants right now because their starting rookie QB is injured. Bro, when he got in the end zone and was doing the dice rolling thing and the other two guys
yeah.
came up, I'm like, this is art.
Oh
This is
well, I mean, well,
pure
it was
theater.
the art before that because he wasn't in the end zone because he threw the touchdown pass. He was in the end zone because he caught a pass, shook a defender, and made his way into the end zone.
How, man, can you?
I mean, to do all to pass the ball off, run the route, catch the ball,
And then
get
avoid
past the
getting tackled.
defender, juke, get in the end zone, and then roll right into camera like do that dice roll. That's like an instant meme.
You know
The
that
dice roll alone is an instant
you
meme.
know that defensive back is being who missed the tackle is getting roasted on the film session for that. Like it's one thing if Michael Vick was catching the ball, Michael Vick's one of the best, but James James, I don't know
Yeah,
how he did it. But man, but that
yeah.
dice rolling celebration.
and
Uh,
and that and that was only the second trick play they ran because the first one for that first touchdown that was another amazing one. But here's the thing: they still lost the game,
well,
and it's yeah.
Jameis
But
needs to, first of all, and I've heard this said other places. There's too much bad quarterback play in a whole lot of NFL cities for Jameis not to be starting somewhere.
yeah,
And
and
it's just a waste not to have him. He's just too fun.
yeah, someone realizes it, and I think at some point someone's going to amend that. But back to our point of what we're talking about, like
And get him off
there's
the
no
Giants because I don't want the Giants to be likable. So he needs to go somewhere else.
there you go. Hell, the ownership takes care of that because
Yeah,
until they fix the whole GM situation. Like, but that's neither here nor there. But the thing is that getting back to what we're talking about, no one would have cast 6 foot tall opera, sitcom and musical actor Hugh Jackman to play Wolverine, but he's been playing the character for 20 something years now,
and
and
did
it's
you see
really hard to.
he recently said, because before he said, this is it, I'm done, blah blah blah. He's literally recently said, I can't say I'll never play this guy again because things keep going well when I do.
Yeah, he's Wolverine,
Hey, they just
and
made a Billy at the box office, so
and that's the craziest thing. 'Cause I remember when I interviewed him, I was just like, I know he's too tall, but his vibe is right, and who knows if it's gonna work? You know what I'm saying?
he is too tall. But wasn't it great when they did the comic accurate height in Deadpool and Wolverine? That
Yeah,
was
that was
hilarious.
hilarious. That really was hilarious. You know.
So all right, so these transitions have a lot of corporate synergy right now. We're going from the Superman comic to Pierce Bronson possibly being the new DCU, which we don't think is going to happen. Let's talk about this Warner Brothers sale, which is yet to happen. We do know that Warner Brothers is hoping to be purchased by someone soon. There are a lot of potential takers out there. What are your thoughts on this? This is going to have such an impact because if you're into comic book culture, which obviously we are, when you think of Warner Brothers, that's where DC Comics resides. That's where DC
Well,
Studios resides. So it's going to
well,
have an impact on that.
it's going to be really interesting. Like, I think whatever buyer is going to have to decide if they are going to, keep, the Gunsian way of doing things intact, which more than likely they would because
Can you
of,
imagine if they didn't though?
oh, yeah, I can imagine it because teams do that all the time. I mean, you have to understand, having lived in Seattle, I remember um, people in Seattle are still mad about the former owner of Starbucks, or actually the owner of Starbucks, selling the team to a guy from Oklahoma City who promised he was not going to move the Seattle Sonics,
Evil.
and we have the Oklahoma Thunder today because he moved the team within 2 years of making that promise.
The
You know
NBA
what I'm
champion
saying?
Oklahoma City Thunder.
Exactly, which is why it's just the fact that should be. It's just even though I no longer live in Seattle, I still get mad when I think about that. Well, that and
Well,
of
hopefully
course,
that guy doesn't buy Warner Brothers.
but that is the danger is that some of these places say, hey, yeah, if we buy Warner Brothers, we're still going to do theatrical. But then I remember what happened with the Sonics. I also remember, of course, I'm old enough to remember when the Baltimore Ravens used to be the old Cleveland Browns,
Yeah.
and they
Well,
moved in the middle of the night.
hey,
Great
remember
documentary
the
about it.
Baltimore Colts? They're the Indianapolis Colts now.
Yeah, no, exactly. Or maybe the doc was about the Colts, the Baltimore Colts leaving in the middle of the night, or one of the it was one of he's either leaving Baltimore or coming to one of the two. But these things happen, so I think that's really kind of the danger. Is like you know, and
So, are
I'll,
you
I'll
saying that you think that it really depends? It's not like, let's say you have 5 potential buyers.
mhm.
I- Is it? It's. Do you think it's not possible that every single person who could potentially buy Warner Brothers would just say hands off DC, or do you think there's a chance somebody can come in and say, no, I don't want James Gunn, I don't want Peter Safran, we're going to start over?
100% there's that chance, but at the same time also it's like you have to look at the cultures of each of the potential companies that are trying to buy. So for example, if it's Comcast that is trying, if they win the bid, it makes sense from the standpoint that they're neighbors in the San Fernando Valley, so you don't necessarily lose the Warner Brothers lot. It can in a way almost be an extension because they're very close to each other. It can be very simpatico in that way in terms of just physical infrastructure and the fact that HBO Max matching up with Peacock, all of that. If it were me, I would ditch the Peacock name and make it and get rid of the Max. Just call it HBO. It's one of the strongest brands of all time.
Yeah, agreed.
You don't need Coca-Cola Classic. You just need Coca-Cola. You know what I'm saying? That makes sense on one hand. Um, the strength of if Netflix is the buyer, of course, there's not a stickier app when it comes to watching films than Netflix.
So how does that? So if Netflix, well, let's put our corporate hats on for a second.
Okay.
If Netflix buys Warner Brothers, then they then become the home of where DC movies go to stream automatically. So does HBO Max then no longer exist?
That is a question. It's okay. If you want to get real meta about it, Netflix itself runs on AWS on Amazon servers. So, like, Apple at some point could become a last minute big. They have more cash than anybody. Like, I mean, there are all these different ways it can go. But the thing is that I hope whoever buys it. See, the thing is, okay, if Paramount gets it, Paramount has a robust theatrical release, you know, in terms of it being a part of an important part of what they do. One would hope that if Netflix wins, that they still continue to release movies theatrically. It's important, I think. It really is. Just like we talked about a couple of weeks ago, there's no way the first time we watched that Frankenstein movie, that Guillermo del Toro is so beautifully shot. You need to see that in as big a theater as, I've had the fortune of seeing, F1. and you ultimately didn't get out in time, to see F1 as it should have been seen. You know, later on tonight, I'm going to go see Wicked theatrically
Nice.
because, again, one of those movies that's shot for the big screen. Like I'm hoping that whoever buys it doesn't denigrate that. I'm biased in terms of the Warner Brothers lot. Of any of the lots I've ever worked on, the Warner's lot is my favorite, and I would hate for whoever buys it to shutter the Warner's lot. I just think that just in terms of just the bones of the Warner's lot, it's just one of those places that just it doesn't feel right to shutter it, and so I'm hoping that whoever buys it keeps the actual Warner Brothers offices, the sound stages that they use them, that they don't get rid of them. You know what I'm saying?
That's scary to think.
Because
It's scary to think that Netflix is scary to think about. I mean, obviously Netflix has the wealth to make that acquisition, but the higher ups at Netflix have also been kind of vocal, very loudly so, about how theatrical is just kind of whatever to them. They're a streaming company, and the thought of Netflix coming in, buying Warner Brothers, and then all of a sudden maybe there isn't an emphasis on theatrical. That's a little scary to me. I want to live in a world where Marvel Studios movies are coming out in theaters and
Mhm.
DC Studios movies are coming out in theaters. I don't want to live in a world where I can go to the movies for Marvel, but everything DC I've got to stream at home. So this is why this decision, whenever it happens, and it feels like it's not gonna, this thing just feels like it's lingering and not gonna happen anytime soon. But this is why it's so important, because it's going to impact, in terms of comic book culture, one of the big two.
Well, that's the whole thing. I mean, right now we're in a filmmaking recession. Much fewer films are being made. Much fewer films are going to be financed, and so it's kind of the Hunger Games out here in terms of what gets made and how things get made and what happens, and that's going to have a direct effect. And ultimately, when the smoke clears, the studios do whatever they want or need to do that makes money. So, for example, if all of a sudden that's why probably the most anticipated trailer right now is same way you thought Michael. Remember how we heard all these different reports about how, oh my God, the Michael Jackson movie's falling apart and
Mm-hmm.
it's all crazy and is it gonna be one movie or two movies, and they violated something in the script, where they weren't supposed to talk about certain things and they did, so that they have to reshoot the movie. But then when you realize, okay, that trailer makes you realize this is an Antoine Fuqua, John Logan collaboration. Damn, shut the fuck up. And, this is going to
Let the
be,
magic happen.
you were in good hands. So hopefully, the same way that people are going to start anticipating what's going to happen with, the Doom trailer with this new Marvel with these new Marvel movies. That trailer comes out right, boom, you know, we're back in business. And then all of a sudden, people are going to, rather than denigrating comic book movies, they're just going to realize, okay, there is a way to make it work. And so hopefully that will mean more movies, better financed and better written TV shows. The whole nine. But a lot of things are at stake. But I think that people kind of need to take like the long view, because the advent of technology, of a collapsing business, if you just took me by word alone of what I'm describing, I could be describing Hollywood before Easy Rider, Hollywood before Jaws, Hollywood before Star Wars, Hollywood before, all those movies, The Godfather, Love Story, that whole thing, that whole renaissance in the 70s that happened when the studios were when people back then were asking the same questions, and when like Gulf and Western, all these crazy outside companies first started buying the movie studios. There's precedent. Like someone said, what, history rhymes? That's what they mean by that.
Yeah.
That it's, these things have happened before, and it's always been, oh my God, this is the end of movies, and then it turns out there's another breakthrough coming. So I'm optimistic, even though it's a scary, scary time.
It's so speaking of movie studios, we're going to move away from the subject of Warner Brothers, which doesn't seem like it's going to be settled anytime soon, but obviously whenever it does happen, it's going to have a major impact on, again, one of the big two in the superhero movie market. But did you happen to see the first image from the live action Zelda movie?
I have not.
Did you ever play Zelda on Nintendo?
Oh my God! Are you kidding me? The music alone.
I know.
I
So
mean, but I'm going back there. I think if I'm not mistaken, wasn't Zelda like a Commodore 64 game?
Zelda was on the original NES.
Oh no, that's right. 'Cause I remember my cousin Nandi was like a Zelda genius. Like she like solved that joint. Like
I could not figure it out. Zelda was
it,
hard for me. I would
it,
always
it,
take it out and play Mario.
it was a really cool game. The music on that game was absolutely amazing. You know, back in the day. You know, I was always more of an Activision, like you know, if we're gonna go old school, like Pitfall, Enduro, you know, those were some of the games as a kid that I flipped. You know,
I remember Zelda had the gold cartridge, and I always thought that was very cool that the
yeah.
cartridge was gold. But producer Jen, I believe, has an image from Zelda that she can pull up, and there it is. Now,
Wow, that is accurate.
yes, the pointy ears, bow and arrows. Got to be a sword there somewhere. This looks great. Um, this is a great first peek. We see Princess Zelda, we see Link, obviously classic characters. This is I don't know if Zelda has the same. Jen and I, our producer, were talking about this before we started recording, where we were talking about the first Mario Brothers movie, which we'll get into in a second. But Mario, for you and me, is so nostalgic because we grew up on Nintendo games back when Mario was really big. But there's so
Hmm.
many different iterations of Mario games on all the current consoles, whether it be the Wii, whether it be the DS, whatever it may be, that there are just as many kids that are familiar with the product. I don't know if Zelda has that same type of cross generational appeal that Mario. I'm very excited about this because I clearly remember. I don't know if the kiddies will be, but this looks. I mean, just 10 out of 10 in terms of the decision makers who said, "Hey, what's going to be our first look for the fans?" This makes me very excited looking at this.
Well, that's the thing. It's like certain things. It's like the music was so good. Um, you know, like for Zelda, it's like there. You know, there's certain parts of the culture that translate and that I think could resurrect interest in certain things. And so, you know, perfect example is like um, the popularity of back to James Bond, the popularity of the James Bond first person shooter. You know,
Oh man, yeah, yeah.
it to a certain extent, there was a question as to is Bond a dinosaur? Even this was back in the '90s. People were asking, like, is this, you know, because this movie, the franchise went back to the '60s, and they had three, you know, in my lifetime, what 4 or 5 different Bonds. You know what I'm saying? So it was like there was always that same kind of question. But then, you know, are the kids going to get it? But if it works, it works. You know what I'm saying?
This
Like,
looks great. It just looks
yeah, like
epic in scale.
it's got all the right elements, you know. And so I think that um it could be one of those things, like whether it's the aesthetics are right, if they get the music right. um you know, perfect example, okay, if we're talking about IP, like when Michael Mann did Miami Vice with Jamie Foxx and you know, Colin Farrell, like it was so different in certain ways and so stark. It was one of those movies that didn't set the box office on fire, but then at the same time, over the years, kind of become regarded as a classic. But I think they would have had more bang for the buck had they not done that remake of the Phil Collins in the Air. Had they just used the original Phil Collins in the Air, which people associate with the pilot of Miami Vice,
Mhm.
it would have locked people in, you know, and in a way, like sometimes nostalgia is not a bad thing. You know, sometimes, you know, one of the reasons that like, and I can just tell you as somebody that like used to kind of find samples and used to kind of, you know, I was used to find beats for like, Chino XL, old dear friend of mine, rest in peace. For some reason, you could find a beat on any record between 1971 and 1974. Everything was funky. Even rock and roll was funky back then. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that there's a certain thing where, like, if you were hitting the right points, it doesn't matter how old a property is. If you kind of get the vibe right, same thing happened with Lord of the Rings. Like at the time that Peter Jackson adapted all those, Fellowship of the Ring, Twin Towers or Two Towers, Return of the King, the source material was almost 80 years old.
Yeah.
And then even the things that were previously done, like those Baskin, Bastia, I'm messing up all my names, so I apologize. But like all of those things that came before it, like the animated movies from the 70s, like they were there too. And people would say this is not a good idea, but you just have to take the risk. All that matters is, does it feel like the game? Do you get that vibe? And is the movie any good? And then the rest will figure itself out. Crazily enough, it's like, for whatever reason, I've been hearing good things about this He-Man movie, which to me, like, I'm old enough to remember that cartoon.
Oh, that was my jam. Yeah, I can't wait for that.
I remember the really bad movie that got made 30 something years ago.
Masters of the Universe with Dolph Lundgren.
But for whatever reason, there's a lot of positive buzz around the new one. So you never know.
So the last Zelda video game that came out was in 2024. So it's not like there hasn't been a game recently to connect with the kiddies. And obviously, I think a lot of people our age probably played that game too. But just looking at it, the green of Link's clothes, the pointy ears, the hair, looks good to me. And I cannot wait for a trailer. That's going to be awesome.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, everything that you're talking about, like in terms of the quiver, in terms of the lush backgrounds, the color scheme, everything looks right. So maybe, hopefully the rest of it will catch up.
All right, so we're going to stay in the Nintendo universe. And by the way, video game movies, hit or miss. Of late, they've been hits. The most recent Super Mario Brothers animated movie made over 1.3 billion at the box office. Minecraft, I think, was the biggest movie this year. That made almost $1 billion, like in the 900 millions. So there's a lot of money in video game adaptations if you get it right. And
right.
We'll see what happens. But let's stay in the Nintendo universe, if you will. I want to take a look at this Super Mario Brothers Galaxy trailer, because the Mario Brothers movie, speaking of, isn't going to connect to the youth. I felt like it connected so well to kids. One, because Jack Black did a fantastic job as Bowser, and another because you had that viral moment with his Peaches song, singing about Princess Peach. There were so many great things to like about the Mario Brothers movie, but they have the sequel coming out. Why? Because the Mario Brothers movie made $1 billion, and when you make $1 billion, you make a sequel. And they just released a trailer. So I think producer Jen's going to pull up the trailer for us shortly.
Here we go.
All right, let's take a look.
Hey, big guy! No. You wanted to see us?
Love Luigi.
Right on.
That's wild.
Cleaning the paint. And also trim the bonsai bush. Here we go. Hey, Luigi. What's up, Mario? Behold, I made a masterpiece for Princess Peach. What do you think?
Love the colors.
It's trash.
How dare you look at my masterpiece and say that?
I'll burn the skin off your bones.
Sorry about that. That's the old Bowser talking. Still working through my demons, I suppose.
Jack Black nailing it.
Anyway, I need my 8 hours or else I really turn into a monster.
Love the music straight from the video game.
Yeah. Some of these visual references, I'm seeing references from like, you know, when he came through the door from like the Searchers, and then you get Lawrence of Arabia in terms of the scope of
And
the
I'm gonna be taking my
Dune.
father now.
Princess Rosalina, you're coming with me.
Wow.
So April's going to be wild. So we're going to have the Michael Jackson movie and Super Mario Brothers. Watching that, this is where aging comes into play, because obviously, for me, hearing that music, which I recognize from the original games, watching the princess fly, because if you remember from Super Mario Brothers 2 and 3, she always had the ability to kind of like float a little bit. So seeing her fly was cool. But then when you get the Princess Rosalina, I have no idea who that is. But when I watched the trailer with my kids, my daughter specifically, but my son too, because they both played Super Mario Galaxy on their little mini Nintendos, they knew exactly who she was. So great job of plenty of nostalgia to reel us graybeards in, but enough for the kiddies too. So probably gonna be another billion.
Well, no doubt, because the thing is that even just seeing the way it was filmed, even just like, it just feels like something that if you saw it on the big screen, you would appreciate the fact that it's taking up as much of the screen, just the feel of it, and also just some of the references, the visual references. Like, so for example, when he comes out, and, you know, he works his way up the I guess the dollhouse that he's trapped in, and then he kicks the door open, and then he walks in, and then, you know, Mario and Luigi are right there. That's a direct reference to John Ford and the Searchers, like, you know, of opening the door and just that huge vista. Like, so it's always cool to see like these classic visual references from other movies that these kids know nothing about, in even something as you know, as like childlike as or meant for kids as a Mario Brothers movie. So it's cool knowing no matter what the genre is, that you're in the hands of a filmmaker is really
That's
interesting.
why it helps to have a true Hollywood man on this podcast. My expert analysis was, "Ooh, the princess is floating just like she did in Super Mario 2." And Cheo's like, "Here's the exact movie that this shot is inspired from." So you're getting a nice balance of Super Mario's analysis here, folks. I hope you appreciate it. But it looks great. Shout out to Chris Pratt, who a lot of people, when it was announced he was going to be the voice of Mario, I don't want to say weren't happy, but people were like, really, Mario? Okay, but doing a good job. And obviously Jack Black as Bowser. I'm a huge Jack Black fan, going all the way back to School of Rock and him as a musician with Tenacious D.
Oh no,
Just
well, Jack Black, Kung Fu Panda, like, come on, especially the first one. The first one is just such an amazing movie. You know, but the thing is interesting, I think, with Chris Pratt, I think when Chris Pratt realized that like Bradley Cooper and you know, Vin Diesel were making just as much money as he was on those Guardians movies, and all they were doing was voice work. You know what I'm
say,
saying?
let me get some of that action.
Like, yeah, definitely let me get some of that action, because, you know, while he's not doing all these physical stunts, you know, they're coming in post and you know, get to act in a t-shirt and jeans the whole
Yeah,
time. You
no,
know,
it's a big difference. But no, it's nice combo. Kind of Chris Pratt versus Jack Black's Bowser, Chris Pratt's Mario. Shout out to Luigi. Luigi was always my favorite, and I used to always play with him as a kid. I would actually play as player 2 just so I could play with Luigi because I love the green and blue combo. But yeah, looks good. Kids are gonna love it. Two big movies in April. Two. So that's two movies in April that people are expecting to potentially can two April movies bring in $1 billion? I mean,
Easily.
the theaters would love
What
that.
I mean, if good, I mean, good movies can have no cap. You know what I'm saying? It's like that. That was the thing. Was I mean, of course, it's like when you look at how when Sinners dropped, right? Like it was the genius of Ryan Coogler explaining all the different formats and why you wanted to see it in different ways. And then when the movie was actually good and shot for that format, and even just watching it recently, just I really hope it doesn't get lost during the Oscar rush because it came out so early. But just rewatching that movie, it's still the best shot movie I've seen all year. Just in terms of the composition and everything, just aesthetically, it's just beautifully shot. You know what I'm saying? And when people, saw that and appreciated that, they wanted to repeat the experience. Same thing happened with F1. Same thing has happened with every movie that's worked at the box office thus far. Good movies have no ceiling. The problem is that either people don't have the patience, people meaning the studios don't have the patience to kind of give things a theatrical run, or they underestimate what a movie can do and they accidentally undercut the box office because Sinners on a per screen basis could have stayed in IMAX for months longer than it did, but because of contractually it had to leave, so that other movies that had those IMAX slots could take them, and they were kicking themselves, and so IMAX didn't make the same mistake when it came to Christopher Nolan, where he's going to have an exclusive IMAX run of IMAX screens for the Odyssey, which is, forget about it next year.
So speaking of staying in the video game realm, my son's a big Sonic the Hedgehog fan, so he's really liked the Sonic movies lately, and they've been great because he loves Sonic. I remember playing the games on Sega Genesis, but I'm also a big Jim Carrey fan because of In Living Color back in the day. Did you see that Jim Carrey is in talks with Warner Brothers to play George Jetson in the Jetsons? Have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen it, but like, I mean, Jim Carrey is one of those actors that really can do anything. You know what I'm saying? It's like he's, as a physical comedian, he's almost without peer. But then at the same time, like Jamie Foxx, like Robin Williams, he's a legitimate dramatic actor, a really good one. So like whatever he does, I'm not surprised, and whatever he does well, I'm not surprised. I mean, there are times when he's clearly doing things, just to make money. Because hey, I mean, when you particularly as you age, or particularly as you've done so many things as an actor, after a while, you don't necessarily care. You just care about a paycheck and also being seen by the biggest possible audience. But then at the same time, you still also have the ability to, you know, throw down when you need to. I mean,
Yeah.
that's pretty much the Gene Hackman, Michael Caine playbook. You know what I'm saying? It's like, or Sam Jack, if they got a check, I'm taking it. But I still, when given the opportunity, given the material, I can knock you on your behind because I'm that good.
Yeah.
And so, like, I think he's at that role. And I'd also put Anthony Hopkins there too, because Anthony Hopkins will pop up in some commercial shit, but then you'll see him in some indie movie. You're like, oh shit, that's Anthony Hopkins. You know what I'm saying? So like, don't get it twisted. Is what I would say.
So to close out the cast today, this is just rumors right now. Nothing
Mm-hmm.
official has been reported. There have been rumors that Marvel Studios is talking to Jodie Turner-Smith, not for just a rumor right now, and no one knows what it would be for.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, a lot of people are thinking, could this be Storm? Because after Doomsday and after Secret Wars, I think the next thing Marvel Studios is going to focus on is the X-Men. So
Right.
could that be it? I myself was pretty, now again, just rumors, internet rumors at that.
Mm-hmm.
There's not always fire where there's smoke, but when I saw Tron Ares, I remember thinking very heavily I would potentially like to see her as Storm. I like her presence. I think she has the look. But there are a lot of actresses out there that could potentially be Storm, and not just her.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Storm is one of she. I think here's the thing with Storm, okay? Um, like, and this is what's really interesting about Storm because there was always been controversy about, for example, when Halle Berry took the role. Because the thing is that Halle Berry has always been really good at Storm. The problem has been that they've never let Storm be Storm. Storm is absolutely an Omega level mutant.
Yeah, she's
One of the
elite.
most, but you never get to see the same way that you got to see Michael Fassbender as Magneto, and particularly in that not Days of Future Past, but or was it Days of Future Past?
The
One of
scene
them.
with the Nazis in Argentina.
No, not just that, but the scene when he was in RFK Stadium, like when he was just like,
Ah, yeah.
I mean, you got to see Magneto. You know what I'm
Yeah, look at the
saying?
whole stadium.
You never really get to see Storm be Storm, and so that's the thing. Is like, if they're going to recast, because I mean, Halle could still play the role, and although there'll be people that would get, no one would dispute it because she's Halle Berry, and she still is formidable as an actress. She still has the presence, you know, but you have to let the character be as powerful as the comics have always had her be, right? And so, I think Jodie would be a great choice. I also like, so for example, Jamie Lawson, who people know from Sinners, I think would be another great choice. You know what I'm saying? Like Lupita would have been a natural choice, but as would Michaela Cole. But the problem is that both of them were already in Black
Already in the
Panther,
MCU and a major
and
role.
but then again, that never stopped Chris Evans.
True.
So they shouldn't necessarily be eliminated because of that, because I think they will both also do really a great job as Storm. Yetide Badaki, who everybody knows from American Gods, I think would be another great Storm. If I was going to go with a non-actor playing Storm, my vote would probably be Tim's. Because there's something so formidable about her presence that if she could, you never know, but like, there's this one of her images of like, is of her kind of with her eyes kind of highlighted and like kind of from shadow and light. She kind of has a Storm look.
Yeah.
I could definitely see that.
Also,
I think
shout out to Thames for singing "No Woman, No Cry" in the first Wakanda Forever trailer. That was very good.
yes. I think also Adelewo Ade. I'm going to mess up her last name, so I apologize about that. She's one of the actresses from Supercell.
Mm-hmm.
I really think that the thing is that this is the opportunity for a diaspora of actresses to potentially try out, and you just the thing I've learned is that you never know until you have the material, you have the auditions, whoever they cast, because there's so many different ways they can go. Yes, getting the right actress to play Storm is important, but what's more important to me is show the full breadth of Storm's power. Storm is not a sidekick.
No, she's not.
I mean, she's led the X-Men. You know what I'm saying? It's like, if you're gonna give Jean Grey her props, even if you're gonna elevate Wolverine, that's one thing. But in the comics, and also even in the animated series, like, you really got to see Storm be Storm, and I really think that it's gonna be important that whoever is cast, that you really get to see the full breadth of the character, and that's not, people say, oh yeah, well, black female character, your stance is being woke. I mean, well, first off, I'm sick and tired of people misusing woke. But secondly, don't undercut one of the most powerful characters in the Marvel universe.
No, she's an elite character, and you bring up a good point in that not only is she one of the most powerful X-Men, She's also one of the most outside and coming into the real world, one of the most important Black comic book characters ever created.
Yes.
And in the Mount Rushmore of Black superheroes, she's on there. She's one of the top 4, and it's going to be a big decision. I think
Mhm.
people are going to want to see her, like you said, powerful, really showcase her powers. People are going to want to see her in a role of leadership because in the comics, she's always been one of the co-leaders of the team. So a lot to get right, but they've got the time to figure it out. And as we've said with all the actresses we've listed, there are plenty of great candidates out there.
Right. And also, like, there's so many great characters that should also be incorporated into whatever X-Men universe they have. Like, don't sleep on Forge. Don't sleep on Bishop. There are a lot of different, there's a lot to explore. Don't sleep on the Starjammers. Don't sleep on, on the Shi'ar. Like, there are a lot of different ways to expand, you know, into all these different universes. And it's a perfect example. It's like, okay, strangely enough, the Brood was the Marvel reaction to the Aliens movies, right?
Mhm.
'Cause the Brood even looked like aliens,
They
right?
did.
But now everything's owned by one company. So if we talk about all this corporate synergy, the most natural crossover into your Aliens Predator universe with the X-Men is, of course, the Brood, and of course, like you could unite all of them in really interesting ways if you wanted to, you know.
All right, so we need you to write a James Bond movie with Sean Connery. I'm sorry, with Pierce Bronson coming back, and we need you to write X-Men Brood crossover. So we'll get you working on that.
Yeah,
It's
well,
it's
yeah,
funny you mentioned Michael Fassbender as Magneto in that scene where he lifted up RFK Stadium. Ironically, right now, RFK Stadium here in Washington, D.C., is being torn down because they're about to build a $billions stadium over top of it. So right now, stripped down, RFK looks just like it looked in the X-Men movie when Magneto tore it to shreds.
oh, that's crazy. So, well, I'm hoping that Jaden heals, and I'm hoping that they get somebody to um, protect Jaden's blind side as effectively as his mother has protected his hind side.
We are very sensitive about Jaden over here. We are very happy here in the District of Columbia that we have finally found our franchise quarterback. But we do want him to stay healthy. As durable as he is, as rubber bandy as he seems, especially after that elbow injury, not tearing any ligaments, being very lucky with that. I just got my Jaden McFarlane figure with the all black uniform. So now I've got 2 Jaden McFarlane figures. So
That's dope.
you're hitting a sore spot there.
All right.
But going
So,
back,
is there a McFarlane Toys Michael Vick?
there isn't, but there should be.
Yeah,
Maybe, you know what? There might be one back in the day, back when he was with the
the
Falcons. I'll have
Eagles.
to go back and check, but my disposable income wasn't what it was in the early
Yeah.
2000s when I first got out of school. So if there was one, I wasn't getting it.
All right.
Um,
Well, okay. So since we're on the subject of Christmas, and my birthday's coming, I'm a Sagittarius. If you could see Wade that McFarlane Toys could send something my way that we could then we could plug on the show, man. I'm not going to stop you.
I'll see if I could send Todd a message. I'm due to have a chat with him soon.
Oh, cool.
Anyway.
Strangely enough, I interviewed Todd for LA Times for the first Bond movie.
Oh,
So
that's cool. No, I interviewed him multiple times, talking about the 25th anniversary of Image Comics, and my second to last story at the Washington Post. I spoke to Todd McFarlane about McFarlane Toys and how big it's come in terms of making superhero toys, making sports figures, all that stuff. But
yeah. Actually, the question I asked him is, did Todd buy that Superman comic?
hey, you know what? He can afford it.
No doubt.
That's a good question. You know what? I'm gonna look into that.
Yeah.
But all right, brother, that's gonna do it. So another fantastic edition of Blerds in the Attic coming to you from Washington, D.C. and Hawaii. Always a pleasure chatting with you. We'll be talking soon, but hope you have a great Thanksgiving holiday.
Yes.
Eat some pavo, as they say. So, make sure you have a happy Thanksgiving, or as we say in Spanish, Thanksgiving. That's how you say it in Spanish. But yeah,
So yeah,
man.
so definitely, you know, I'm gonna be, you know, you can't cook, but I can, and I'm definitely making some greens. You know, I use smoked turkey, so
Nice.
I'm looking forward to doing that. Then at the same time, Black Friday is interesting because I'm not gonna go shop or anything, but now what's interesting is that okay, now you've got a Black Friday game that Netflix is gonna show. You know, and
That's
then the
right.
last one was so entertaining. The one that Beyonce did the halftime show for. So it's gonna be. I'm definitely excited because I think it's a good game. Isn't it the Eagles?
Yeah, it's going to be a big game. And Netflix just signed Elle Duncan from
Right.
ESPN. She's going to be handling a lot of their sports stuff now. So I'll be tuning in for that. So it's going to be, well, we're going to have a lot of turkey, a lot of football. So, you know, by the time we do the next podcast, end of the week, we'll probably be a few pounds heavier, although you'll probably run it off since you're always running on the beach because that's what you do when you're
Well,
flexing
no,
on everybody.
I don't run on the beach, brother. I run beside the beach. If I was
Okay,
running
okay.
on the beach,
You don't do the
I'm
Rocky
old,
thing.
and my knees would go. You know what I'm saying?
You don't do the Rocky Apollo Creed thing where you're like racing somebody right along the water.
Nah, man, it's just staying upright at this age is hard enough. But you know, I've got the Honolulu Marathon coming up, so I'm trying to get ready for that. I'm trying to lose at least 7 more pounds. I'm nowhere near my goal, but I've already lost over the course of this year. I've lost a good 33 pounds.
Oh,
So if I can if I can hit that 40, you know, before 53 on December 12th, you know, and running on the 14th, you know, that's all you can ask for.
all right, man. Well, good luck to you. So thank you all for tuning in. Once again, this is David Betancourt, Cheo, Hodari, Coker, Blerds in the Attic. We're here every week. Same bat time, same bat channel. We'll see y'all next time.
Peace and Excelsior, and believe it or not, Jen, I'm not cursing anymore. I promise. But I'm gonna think it. Excelsior is mother. There you go.
See you next time.
All right.